I had everything: a husband who kissed me on the forehead every morning, a daughter and a son who fell asleep in my arms, a house filled with laughter. And then the diagnosis. The hospital. Loneliness. And a strange scent on my pillow. While I was fighting for my life, she was getting closer and closer. At first, she wanted to help. Then she wanted to stay. And then, she wanted to take everything away. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about how to survive when you've been erased from your own life. And about how to come back, not to ask for forgiveness, but to take everything back. If someone had asked me to describe my life 6 months ago, I would have smiled and said, I'm happy. Maybe not like in the movies, not with perfect mornings with cappuccino on the windowsill and glamorous weekend getaways. But I had happiness, the real, quiet, everyday kind. We had a regular 2-story house in the suburbs with a stained carpet in the living room because our son spilled orange juice and we never got around to replacing it. We had a car that started on the 3rd try every morning. And we had children, 2 little universes that revolved around me. Sophie, our 8-year-old daughter, with red hair like my grandfather's and serious eyes that seemed older than her age. And Tommy, my little boy 4 years old, who loves trucks, dinosaurs, and waking up at exactly 5:40 a.m. Because, Mommy, the sun is rising. My husband Jason was my rock. We had been together for over 10 years. He had his flaws. He might forget to take out the trash or buy the wrong kind of yogurt for Sophie, but he was thoughtful, calm, and reliable. He always hugged me from behind while I washed the dishes and whispered silly things in my ear to make me laugh. Our weekends were filled with the usual: shopping at Target, coffee and donuts, laundry, cartoons. In the evenings, we put the kids to bed. I went back to the stove and Jason did the dishes. Then we watched something on Netflix or just sat next to each other, each in our own silence. There was something else that made life easier: my best friend Kelly. She had known me since school. We had been through our first loves, breakups, and weddings together. She was Sophie's godmother and the first person I sent photos of my new hairstyle or silly memes to. Sometimes I even caught myself thinking that I was afraid of how good everything was. It was as if the world was a pendulum. If things were too good, a blow was already coming in the opposite direction. But I pushed those thoughts away. Because the truth was that I loved my life. I loved our messy family routine. I loved our arguments about Jason not folding the towels properly again. I loved waking up in the middle of the night because Tommy wanted a drink of water and seeing Jason dozing in his doorway with a cup of milk. We may not have been perfect, but we were my perfect. And I didn't notice that a tiny crack had already appeared in this happy picture. It started with little things. Fatigue. At first I thought it was seasonal. Spring, kids, work. But more and more often I found myself barely making it to the evening. It was as if my batteries were running out before noon. I fell asleep not watching TV, but sitting by Tommy's crib, not finishing the story I was reading to him. Once at work, my vision darkened and I almost fell right there in the office. I laughed and said I just hadn't had breakfast. But that was the first time I saw something disturbing in Kelly's eyes. She picked me up after work and drove me home. We were silent in the car, but her fingers were nervously gripping the steering wheel. You look exhausted, she said softly. Have you been checked out lately? I waved her off. It's just the season. Spring is like that. And Tommy isn't sleeping at night. Everything's fine. I believed it myself. Well, almost. At that point, I didn't know that my body wasn't just tired. That it was screaming for help. That every step I took was like walking on thin ice that was about to crack. That my perfect life was coming to an end. I didn't go to the doctor right away. To be honest, I just didn't want to. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to know. Because as long as you don't have a diagnosis, everything can still be normal, right? Until you hear those words from the doctor's mouth, you can imagine that it's just spring allergies, vitamin deficiency, lack of sleep, nerves, a bad pillow. Anything but a real problem. And besides, we had too much going on at the time. Sophie was preparing for her performance at the school talent show. She decided to sing Part of Your World from The Little Mermaid, and I spent several evenings in a row practicing her intonation with her. She had a quiet voice, but when she sang, I swear, my heart skipped a beat. How will I look on stage, Mom? Will I be embarrassed? You'll be the most charming mermaid in town, I replied. And I believed it 100%. Tommy was fascinated by dinosaurs at the time. He showed me how they ran, roared, and what their teeth looked like. He had a favorite stuffed Tyrannosaurus Rex that he named Max. And every night before bed he would say, Max says Mom needs to sleep more. And I laughed. But deep down, something was squeezing my heart. Because every time I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, it was hard to breathe. Every time I stood in the kitchen for a long time, my legs ached as if I had run a marathon. And one morning when I woke up, my fingers were swollen as if I had been clenching my fists all night. And Jason saw it. I don't know if he realized how serious it was. But one evening, when I fell asleep at the dinner table with my head on my hands, he came over, gently ran his fingers through my hair, and said, "Laura, maybe you should see a doctor?" I didn't answer right away. I was afraid. But that night, for the first time, I felt real fear. Not just tiredness. Not just discomfort. Something deeper. As if my body was trying to tell me, "You're not in charge of this ship anymore." I am. I made an appointment for a checkup on Friday. Kelly arrived on Thursday. She brought coffee from my favorite cafe, cinnamon rolls, my favorite, and a new set of dinosaurs for Tommy. She sat with me on the porch while the kids played in the yard. "You look pale," she said, looking into my eyes. "Laura, are you serious?" "I'll go tomorrow. I'll get the tests done. It's just, I sighed. "It's scary." Kelly grabbed my hand and squeezed it. "I'm with you, okay? If you want, I'll go with you. And if anything happens, I'll be here. For you, for Jason, for the kids. You know me." I smiled. Her words warmed me. I truly believed that she was there because she wanted to help. Because she loved me. And I had no reason to think otherwise. Not then anyway. The next day, Jason offered to take me to the doctor, but I insisted on going alone. I wanted it to be a normal day for the kids. I wanted Sophie to go to school and Tommy to play in his room while his dad was at work. I thought I'd just go, listen to something like a little iron, a little rest, and everything would be the same as before. But when I sat down in the doctor's office and saw the seriousness in his eyes, I knew. Everything was going to change. The hospital room was quiet. Too quiet. I sat across from Dr. Merrill, a thin man with slightly graying temples and cautious, almost sympathetic eyes. In front of him lay my medical chart, printed test results, and several charts with notes. His fingers slid silently over them while I sat, clenching the armrests of my chair so hard that my knuckles turned white. "Ms. Reynolds," he finally looked up, "I want you to know that we will do everything we can. But your situation requires a serious approach." "Is it cancer?" I whispered. "Is it definitely cancer?" "No," he shook his head. "But it's not easy either. You have systemic lupus erythematosus. It's a chronic autoimmune disease." I didn't understand anything. The words sounded familiar, but they didn't register. "Your body is attacking itself," he explained gently. "This causes inflammation in your joints, organs, skin, and blood. Your immune system is out of control." I was silent. It sounded like science fiction. Like something that happens to someone else. Not me. But, is it treatable? We can control the disease, slow it down. But there is no cure yet. And in your case, the process is already affecting your internal organs. Your liver, your lungs. The indicators are alarming. I looked at him as if through glass. What next?" He pulled out a folder. "I recommend that you be hospitalized for 2 to 3 months. We'll start an experimental course of therapy. There's a new drug that offers hope. But this is serious. And you'll need to focus entirely on your treatment. 2 to 3 months. 2 to 3 months without your children. Without a home. Without my normal life. How would I tell Tommy that his mom wouldn't be around for the whole spring? How would I explain to Sophie that her mom was staying in the hospital because her own body had decided to destroy itself? I don't remember how I left the clinic. My head was spinning. My ears were ringing like a siren. I couldn't drive home. I couldn't tell Jason, not yet. I got into my car in the parking lot and just sat there. I didn't start the engine. A woman nearby was unloading groceries from her car, and her little girl was squealing about ice cream. I watched them, and tears streamed down my cheeks. Silently. Warm. Painful. I wanted to call Kelly, but I couldn't. I wanted to call my mom. She died when I was a sophomore. I wanted to run away. And then my phone rang. "Jason." I wiped my face and took a breath. I pressed answer. "Hi, sweetheart. How's it going?" His voice was so familiar, so comforting. "Everything's fine," I lied. I don't know why. I just couldn't say it. Not then. Not on the phone. "How are the kids?" I asked, swallowing my tears. Tommy made a sandball and said it was a meteorite. And Sophie is rehearsing her song. For the 125th time. Seriously. My ear is going to fall off. I laughed. It was a strange, brittle laugh. Are you okay, Lo? His voice darkened. Yes, another lie. Just tired. I'm going to go for a walk. Get some air. Okay. But don't be long. I ordered pizza. We hung up and I was alone again. In the car, with a diagnosis hanging over my life like a black cloud. I don't remember how long I sat there. Probably an hour. 2? Then I just drove to the park. I sat down on a bench and watched the children running around the playground. And at that moment, I knew one thing. I couldn't break down. Not now. Not for them. But I also knew that I would need support. More than I was ready to ask for. That night, after the kids went to bed and Jason fell asleep, I went into the kitchen and called Kelly. When she picked up the phone, I couldn't say anything. I just cried. Laura? What's wrong? I have lupus, I whispered. I'm going to the hospital. For a long time. And then she said the words I will always remember, don't worry. I'll take care of everything. At the time, I believed she meant she would take care of me. I didn't know yet that she meant something completely different. I had never found it so difficult to pack a suitcase. Even when we went on our honeymoon, I didn't go over every t-shirt and every pair of socks in my head with such intensity. But this time was different. I wasn't just going on a trip. I was leaving my home, my family, my children. And honestly, I didn't know if I would return the same person I was. Why are you going to the hospital, Mom? Sophie asked, sitting down next to me on the bed. My heart sank. She was still so young, only 8. And so smart at the same time. I knew I couldn't lie. Because Mommy is a little sick, sweetheart. And the doctors want to take care of me. So I can get stronger. So I can run in the park with you again and bake cookies that you don't eat because they are too vanilla. She laughed, that thin, clear laugh that pierced through my panic. Will you be far away? A little, but Dad will bring you here. And I'll call. I promise. She lowered her eyes. You won't leave us forever, will you? That was the question. That was what I feared most, that she, so young, already felt the fear of loss. I hugged her tightly. Never. Even if I'm far away, I'll always be your mom. And I'll always fight to be there for you. She nodded. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. And she went to her room. Tommy didn't ask any questions. He just said, Mom, you won't forget my dinosaur, will you? No, sweetie. Max will be with me. I actually took that soft, worn dinosaur. I put it on top of my clothes. And I almost broke down when I zipped up my suitcase. Kelly arrived in the morning to help with the luggage. She hugged me a little tighter than usual. We're here. With Jason. With the kids. I told you everything's under control. Just focus on your treatment. I nodded. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Before we left, Jason helped me out to the car. We stood at the door for a few minutes. I stared at the windows, trying to memorize every detail of our house. Sophie's drawing on the glass. Tommy's bike parked crookedly by the porch. I'm scared, I whispered. Jason leaned over and kissed me on the forehead. You're the strongest woman I know. And I'll be fine. With the kids. With everything. Just hang in there, okay? I squeezed his hand before getting out of the car. And I went inside. My hospital room was unremarkable. White and gray. With a plastic table next to the bed. A TV that didn't work properly. A faint smell of antiseptic that stung my nose. But the worst thing was the silence. The silence in which you are left alone with your thoughts. With your body that is failing you. With fear. I couldn't sleep at night. I listened to the sounds in the hallway, the dripping of the system, my own breathing. Everything sounded too loud. I wrote to Jason. He replied that the children were asleep. Tommy wanted a bedtime story, and Sophie had trouble falling asleep. They miss you, he wrote. But we're holding on. I closed my eyes and let myself cry. Not loudly. Quietly. Into my pillow. Because now this was my reality. A hospital bed. Exhaustion, aching joints. Anxiety about every day I would be away from my children. I had to hold on. Because if I broke down, who would be there for them? But deep down, something was gnawing at me. Even then, I felt that it wasn't just me who was changing. Something was changing at home. I just didn't know yet how much. The first days in the hospital are like entering a new dimension. You don't live, you exist in something between drops, tests, nurses' questions, plastic trays with food you don't eat. I hardly spoke for the first 2 days. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't gather my thoughts. My brain felt like an old radio, picking up signals from 10 different stations at once, none of them clear. On the 3rd day they arrived. My family. Jason was holding Tommy in his arms. Sophie was walking alongside with a teddy bear. When I saw them at the door of the ward, some invisible film fell away from me. Mom. Tommy rushed to me first. He hugged my legs, then my stomach, then, even though it was forbidden, climbed onto the bed. You still smell like home, he said, snuggling into my shoulder. Sophie was more reserved. But when I reached out my arms, she threw herself into my embrace. You've lost weight, she whispered. But your eyes are the same. I laughed and cried at the same time. It was the first time I felt that I was still their mom. Regardless of the diagnoses. Jason brought my favorite pajamas from home and slipped a pillow from our bedroom onto the bed. So it doesn't smell like a hospital, he smiled. They stayed with me for an hour. Then another half hour. Tommy didn't want to leave and Sophie said she would write me a letter. Jason held my hand for a long time before leaving. We'll come tomorrow, okay? Okay, I said, watching them leave. Sure enough, they were back the next day. But this time, she was with them. Kelly. I was surprised, but I didn't suspect anything. Honestly, I was even pleased. She brought coffee, flowers, drawings from Sophie as if she had collected them herself in a folder, and a box of cookies. Well, Star, she said cheerfully, are you driving everyone crazy here? Only the orderlies, I joked. They're already afraid of me. They say I ask too many questions. Kelly sat down across from me and started telling me the news about her neighbor, how hard it was to find a decent parking spot at the mall, Sophie's new dress for the talent show. I rehearsed with her yesterday, she said casually. We worked on her breathing a little. She's so smart. And then Tommy asked me to read him a story, can you believe it? You were at our house? I tried to hide my surprise. Well, yes. Jason said I could come over and hang out with the kids while he was at the store. You know how it is. I'm Kelly. I nodded. Yes, she was Kelly. My best friend. She kisses my kids on the cheeks. She knows their favorite games. She has a key to our house. And something inside me twitched. Like a barely perceptible note of falsehood in a familiar song. Like a word spoken with too much ease. The next day they came together again. And 2 days later again. And again. And every time I heard. Kelly and I baked cupcakes. We played Monopoly with Aunt Kelly. Aunt Kelly let us eat dinner on the couch. Kelly was everywhere. And I started to notice it. You spend a lot of time with them, I said one evening when we were alone. Yeah. It's not easy for Jason. 2 kids, work, laundry. I'm there for him. And I love them, Lo. They're almost like my own. She smiled. She held my hand tightly. But for the first time, something about her smile seemed insincere. I convinced myself again. I'm tired. I'm imagining things. She's just helping out. Don't be paranoid. But deep down, something whispered. Look closer. Time passed strangely in the hospital. It felt like one long day, broken up by IVs, procedures, and silence, in which thoughts multiplied like mushrooms after rain. They began to prepare me for experimental therapy. A new drug, new risks. I signed page after page, and each one felt like a death sentence. Then Dr. Merrill looked at me and said, but there is a chance. And it's not small. In your case, it's something that could change everything. That gave me hope. But at the same time, it made me even more anxious. Because I understood that while I was here, while I was fighting, somewhere out there, my children were living day after day, without me. Jason came alone less and less often. At first, it was convenient. Kelly helped with the children. And then it became normal. Soon Kelly was coming with them and Jason might not show up at all. He's very busy, she explained. Work, paperwork, the house. I told him I'd take the kids and come over. Everything's under control. And I believed her. Even though something was stirring inside me. Tommy would rush into the room, excitedly saying, Mom. Aunt Kelly and I baked cookies today. She let me lick the dough off the spoon. Sophie was calmer. But she also seemed attached to Kelly. They hugged each other. She sat on her lap. She whispered something in her ear. And more often, not to me. And I began to notice the little things. When Kelly mentioned our breakfast or how Jason bought the kids a new toaster, it was as if she had been there. Not a guest, not a helper, but a part of the family. As if she lived there. When I asked her carefully, you've been here a lot lately, haven't you? She didn't flinch. On the contrary, she smiled and replied, come on, don't be silly. It's just convenient. I'm nearby, the kids know me. And they need me. It's normal. You're not jealous, are you? She said it with a smile in a tone that suggested I should laugh it off and wave it away. But I didn't laugh. The more I kept quiet, the more she appeared in my life. More precisely in my place. One evening I wrote to Jason. I can't stop thinking that Kelly is spending more time with the kids than she should. Is everything okay? His response was immediate. Lo, she's just helping out. She's trying. You know they need their mom and she's playing with them, reading to them, taking them to the park. You need to rest. Don't get yourself worked up. It's an illness, Laura. Don't let her get into your head. Those words crushed me. Don't get yourself worked up. It's an illness. I had only just started treatment and already they were questioning me? I sat in bed holding the phone and for the first time I thought. Maybe it's all in my head. Maybe it's a side effect. Maybe I really am seeing ghosts where there aren't any. And I convinced myself that I couldn't lose trust in those around me. I told myself, Kelly is your friend. Jason is your husband. You're just scared. This will pass. And when they all arrived the next morning, Kelly with the kids, Jason with a bouquet of lilies, I smiled. I pretended everything was fine. I laughed when she told me how Tommy had mixed up the shampoo and shaving cream. I agreed with Jason when he said how hard it was to keep everything together, but that Kelly is such an angel. But something inside me was already broken. My intuition. My confidence. My presence in my own life. I was retreating. Gradually. Imperceptibly. But irreversibly. And something told me. This is only the beginning. The first time Jason didn't show up at all, I could understand. Problems at work, he wrote. I had to stay late to finish the quarterly report. Kelly will pick up the kids and come over with them, okay? Okay? I stared at that okay, as if it held the essence of our new life. Jason was there. At home. And I was here in the hospital. He could give me a hug, through her. And I agreed. Again. Because what else could I do? Kelly arrived alone. Tommy was asleep in the car. Sophie was feeling a little under the weather. We decided not to wake the kids. But I wanted to bring you some coffee and talk, she said, placing a latte with almond milk on the table. How are you today? Maybe you could bring them tomorrow after all? I tried to sound gentle. I miss them. Lo, you have to save your strength. I'm with them every day. Everything's fine. Sophie's drawing. Tommy's invented a new game with dinosaurs. Jason, he's holding on. But you can see he's tired. It's not easy for him. I nodded. And again. And again. And then I noticed she was sitting in my chair. The one the kids called Mommy's throne. The one that had always been in my bedroom. She had brought it here, from home. That's my chair, isn't it? I asked quietly. Yeah. I thought you'd feel more comfortable. It smells like home, doesn't it? I watched her sitting there, comfortably settled with her legs crossed. Her face glowed with confidence. And something inside me stirred. It was as if she felt too comfortable here. The next day, only Sophie arrived. No Kelly. No Tommy. Where's everyone? I asked, hugging my daughter close. Dad went to the store. Aunt Kelly stayed with Tommy. And Dad said I'm a big girl now, so the nurse can let me see you first. So Dad's here? I asked, looking around. He's parking the car. He said he'd be right in. I looked at her closely. Her eyes avoided mine. She always looked straight ahead. She always told the truth, even if it was something like, Mom, your casserole is weird today. But now she was nervously twisting the strap of her purse. Sweetie, are you sad? No, she said quietly. Just tired. I stroked her head. You can tell me anything. Always. Remember. She was silent. She nodded. Then she whispered. Mom, I want you to get better soon. I smiled through my tears. Me too, sweetie. I'm working on it every day. After that evening, I couldn't help but pay attention. Kelly showed up more often than Jason. She replied to my messages when I wrote to Jason. She sent me photos of Sophie's performance that he was supposed to send. She captioned them, our girls. Ours? When I mentioned to Jason that I hadn't seen Tommy in 4 days, he said, he's got a bit of a cough. We didn't want to take any chances. Why didn't you go yourself? Well, Kelly was there. She said she'd drop him off. That Kelly said started to suffocate me. As if she had more say than I did. As if she was already a mother. A mistress. A housekeeper. And I felt like I was losing something important. Not just a presence in my children's lives. I was losing my role. My place. And every day it became harder to convince myself that it was just paranoia. Because Sophie became quiet. Tommy didn't want to talk on the phone. Jason was pulling away. And Kelly, she was just digging her heels in deeper in our home. I wasn't sure anymore that this was help. I was starting to fear that it was a replacement. I was called to the doctor's office in the morning, but not because my condition had worsened. On the contrary, the preliminary results of the experimental therapy were encouraging. My liver enzymes had improved slightly, and the inflammation in my lungs had decreased. There's a chance your body is responding well, Dr. Merrill said. But we need your consent to continue the treatment. What exactly do you need? Your partner's signature, he replied. Due to the terms of the experimental protocol. I called Jason. He agreed to come the next morning. And honestly, I was thrilled we hadn't talked alone in a long time. He came into the room a little later than we had agreed. He was holding coffee and a fresh magazine for me. Traffic, he said, smiling. Sorry, but I'm here. We talked for a few minutes. He asked how I was feeling, told me about work, and how Kelly had helped with the grocery shopping while he was on the phone with a client. Then the doctor arrived. He asked Jason to come with him to fill out some paperwork. I'll be quick, he said, getting up. I didn't even have time to drink my coffee. I nodded, smiling. But when he left, I noticed his phone on the nightstand. I wasn't going to read anything. Really. I just put it closer so I could give it to him when he came back. But then it vibrated. A message. Then another one. Messenger. A window popped up with the name Kelly Yellowheart. I held my breath. I didn't have the right to. But my fingers touched the screen on their own. The phone wasn't locked. It was the happiest night of my life. I can still hear you whispering my name. You said you loved me. Say it again when you get back. I miss you. Can I stay with you for another night? The kids are used to it. I'm part of your family. The world went dark. My heart wasn't beating, it was screaming. Every word burned my skin. It killed my memories. It destroyed my trust. My best friend. My husband. Together. Not in my fears. Not in my assumptions. In reality. I put the phone back down when I heard footsteps in the hallway. My face was calm. Like a mask. Jason came in and smiled. Everything's been taken care of. I'm going to go, okay? I'll stop by with the kids later. Tommy misses you. Okay, I replied. My voice was steady. Warm. I'll be waiting. He kissed me on the forehead and I almost flinched. His lips still smelled of betrayal. When he left, I sat in silence for 40 minutes. I couldn't move. I knew that everything had changed. It was no longer doubt. Not suspicion. Not intuition. It was proof. After Jason left the room, leaving behind the door and the phone, and I read that message, the world didn't break. It just went flat. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I lay there in silence, holding the phone in my hands, and I couldn't feel my body. It couldn't be true. It didn't make sense. Kelly? My Kelly? The one we drank wine with and laughed at TV shows with. The one I helped get back on her feet after her divorce, who said I was her rock. And Jason. My husband. The father of my children. No. 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 I repeated it in my head like a mantra, but it didn't help. It wasn't just shock, it was paralysis. I stared at the ceiling. Then at the floor. Then at Tommy the dinosaur on the nightstand. The world became unreal. It was as if I had woken up in someone else's dream. I wanted to disappear. To turn off my thoughts. To stop breathing. It wasn't betrayal. It was erasure. They were together. In my house. With my children. She was taking my place. And he had let her. I closed my eyes and pressed myself against the pillow. God, what should I do? I whispered. What the hell should I do? I spent the next few hours in a state close to catatonia. I don't even remember the nurse bringing me my medicine. I don't remember them changing my four. I just nodded, smiled, reacted automatically. And inside there was nothing. Disgusting, sticky, dark. I felt crazy. Like it wasn't me. Like I was watching someone else's story. A TV series in which the actress looked like me. Fear consumed me. What would happen to the children? What if he turned them against me? What if she said I was inadequate? What if he took them away from me forever? I didn't know who to call. What to say? Where to start? I had no strength. No faith. Only betrayal. And questions without answers. It wasn't until evening that I remembered Lindsay again. I wasn't sure I could talk. But I dialed her number. Laura. Her voice was warm, surprised. Oh my God, I was so worried. How are you? I was silent for a few seconds. Then I said barely audibly. They're together. Jason and Kelly. I saw the messages. She wrote to him about the night. About how happy she was. About how the kids were getting used to her. Lindsay was silent for a long time. Then she said, Oh my God. I don't even know what to say. How are you feeling? Like I'm dead. But I haven't been buried yet. I don't know what to do, Lindsay. I don't know how to live. You don't have to know right now. This isn't the time to be strong. This is the time to survive. And then we'll figure out what to do. I started crying. Finally. Not hysterically. Not loudly. Just tears streaming down my face. I'm scared. For the children. For myself. What if I can't prove to anyone that this isn't madness? What if they really are? Listen. I'm with you. And I know a guy. He's a security specialist. Very quiet, very reliable. We'll start small, okay? Just see what's going on. You're not alone, Lo. I won't let them erase you. I took a breath. Deep. Painful. But it was the first breath I took that wasn't into emptiness. It was filled with hope. No, I wasn't strong yet. But there was a crack in me through which, perhaps, little by little, the light would shine through. I was scared. Not for myself, for my sanity. For the remnants of faith that had not yet been burned away. I agreed to help Lindsay not because I was brave. I just couldn't sit in that room anymore, staring at the ceiling and thinking, what if it's not true? What if I was wrong? I wanted to know. I had to know. And when Alex, her cybersecurity acquaintance, agreed to help, it made me feel like I had something to hold on to. It'll be quiet, he said on the phone. We'll set up some microphones. You can listen online or get a recording. I gave him the code to the back door and told him when Kelly usually took the kids to the park. It was awful. Imagining a stranger entering my home. But even worse was not knowing what was going on there without me. 2 days later, I received the first recordings. Holding the phone, I felt my fingers tremble. I took a deep breath. I pressed play. At first, there was normal household noise. Kelly was laughing. The children were playing somewhere. Then Jason's voice. She didn't call today. That's good. Maybe she's accepted reality. I told you we can't live in limbo. And the kids love me. They need stability. I'm just afraid that when she comes back, it will all start again. The guilt, the tears, the pressure. She won't be back for long. With that illness, you said yourself it was only a matter of time. She's barely hanging on. Kelly, I love you. And the children are our future. I'm like a mother to them. And you know that's true. Pause. Rustling. And then the sound of a kiss. Intimate. Unashamed. I clenched my headphones in my hands. My eyes slowly misted over, but I didn't cry. Not this time. It was confirmation. Bitter. Unexpected even after everything. But real. They were together. They had been together all this time. While I was lying under IVs holding a pillow that smelled like home, she was taking my home. She was taking my children. My husband. My world. The other entry was even worse. Kelly irritated. Sophie was whining again that she misses her mom. I'm tired of hearing it. She has to get used to it. This is her new reality. I'm her family now. If she fights it, I won't let her go to the hospital. She's still little. She'll forget. And somewhere in the silence, Jason's quiet voice. Don't say that. But without conviction. Without anger. Without struggle. I sat in bed listening to this and there was no scream in me. There were no tears. Just a feeling like I was standing on the shore after a hurricane. Everything was destroyed. But the sea was no longer raging. I knew for sure now. This was war. Not physical. Not with weapons. But for my children. For myself. And I had to win. Even if I didn't know how yet. I started to pick up the pieces. Not because I wasn't in pain anymore. The pain was there every day, sharp and relentless. But I realized that every day I stayed silent was another day someone else was living my life. I couldn't let that happen anymore. My lawyer, Mrs. Clark, a woman with a gaze that could pierce walls, agreed to act immediately. We need to have your mental state officially documented. Visit an independent psychotherapist. If your husband or his lawyer decide to accuse you of instability, we will be ready. I went through 3 sessions exhausted, worn out, with circles under my eyes and my heart still beating in survival mode. But the doctor wrote clearly. The patient is fully aware of reality, psychologically stable, and thinking logically. That piece of paper became my shield. But the real weapon was the truth. The truth that I had to get not from microphones or correspondence, but from those for whom I lived, from my children. I wrote to Jason that I wanted to see them. Bring them yourself. Without Kelly, I added. She's just helping. He began in reply. Without Kelly, I repeated. He agreed. That day, I covered the bed with a blanket and laid out juice and cookies, everything I could afford in a hospital room. I wanted my children to feel that their mother was a safe place, a place where there was still warmth. They came in quietly. Tommy immediately ran to me and hugged me around the neck. Mom, you smell like you used to. Sophie was slower. She looked at me warily, as if something was keeping her at a distance. Hi, sweetie. I smiled. Come sit next to me. Jason left us for a few minutes, saying he was going to the coffee machine to get some chocolate for Tommy. We were left alone. I looked at my daughter and felt a lump forming in my throat. Sophie, I said quietly, I can see you're sad. Please tell me what happened. She lowered her head. Her fingers clenched the edge of the pillow. The silence lasted forever. I can't. Why? Aunt Kelly said that, if I tell you, I'll never see you again. I felt the ground sway beneath my feet. Look at me, sweetie, I said, cupping her face in my hands. That's not true. No one can ever separate us. I promise. We're together. Always. It'll be our little secret, okay? My daughter's eyes filled with tears. She lives with us. In our bedroom. She says she's the boss now. She tells us what to do. She gets angry when you're mentioned. She says you're not coming back. Does she hurt you? I could hardly breathe. Sophie nodded. Slowly. Painfully. When Dad's not here. She yells at us. And then, she laughs when he comes home. Why didn't you tell me before? Because she said that. If Dad gets angry, he'll leave us too. I hugged her. Tightly. Through my tears. I'm here. I won't leave you. No one will ever make you keep quiet again. Never. And then I realized. I'm not afraid anymore. My child said it out loud. And now I had a duty. To her. To Tommy. To myself. I won't let them erase me from my children's lives. After talking to Sophie, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was excited. It was because, for the first time in a long time, I was certain. Every word my daughter said confirmed everything I was afraid to say out loud. And now I knew if I kept quiet, if I gave them one more day, I would be betraying not only myself. I would be betraying her. I would be betraying Tommy. I would be betraying the mother in me. I filed for divorce the very next day. My lawyer, Clark, put it together in no time. And brilliantly, too. The statement had everything: psychological conclusions, audio evidence, medical reports confirming my condition. Everything so that Jason wouldn't have a chance to turn it against me. He didn't know anything yet. And I wanted him to find out at the right moment. The doctors decided to discharge me 2 weeks early. I was on the mend. My results had stabilized. My vitals were normal. I asked that no one be told, not even Jason. Not even the children. This had to be quiet. Not out of revenge. Out of necessity. I had to see everything with my own eyes. When I stood in front of my own door, my hands were shaking. The keys were still mine, although the door had long since ceased to be mine. I went in. Quietly. The kitchen light was on. Laughter. Kelly's laughter. I took a few steps and froze. Candles on the table. Wine. Food. She was wearing my blouse. The one I left in the laundry before I was hospitalized. Jason was pouring her a glass. She was laughing, touching his hand. They looked like a couple. He didn't see me. Neither did she. It'll work out, she said. We're almost a family. Just a little longer and we'll be officially together. You can see for yourself. Her condition isn't improving. And the children are mine. They're with me. Kelly. He looked away. You know I don't want to lose. You already lost her. And that's the right thing. She's weak. We're strong. Then I took a step forward. Oh, really? My voice was calm. Barely audible, but it cut through the air like a scalpel. Kelly flinched. Jason spun around, and the glass fell off the table and shattered. Laura. How? I was holding an envelope in my hands. And a folder. Don't worry, I won't be long. I just wanted to give you the documents in person. About the divorce. I threw the envelope into his hands, and I put the folder on the table. There are recordings of your lovely conversations. Your plans for my children. Your hugs. And something else. My psychiatric evaluation. And the lawyer's evidence. Kelly stood there, pale as a ghost. Jason was speechless. You both wiped me out of your lives while I was fighting for it. Now it's my turn. I went up to the bedroom. Sophie and Tommy were already asleep. I quietly packed their things. Their favorite toys. A book. Pajamas. When I came out with the children in my arms, Jason was standing in the hallway as if he wanted to say something. No, I stopped him with a look. Not in front of me. Not in front of the children. We left. I didn't look back. I never thought that one day I would find myself in a courtroom, holding my 8-year-old daughter's hand, while the man I once danced a slow dance with at my wedding and the woman who called me sister sat on the bench opposite me. We temporarily settled in a small hotel. It wasn't luxurious, but it was cozy. Sophie drew on the windows with her finger and wrote, I read Heart Mom. Tommy built fortifications out of pillows. I promised them it was temporary. But it was hard to tell the truth. I didn't know how long this fight would last. The court date was set quickly. In the documents, I requested full custody of the children, as well as the house, compensation for medical treatment, and restrictions on Kelly's contact with the children. My lawyer said, we don't just want to win. We want the court to see that this isn't just about betrayal. It's about abuse. Deception. Emotional abuse. I nodded. They did everything they could to make me disappear. But I'm still here. On the day of the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse in a simple dark coat. No jewelry. No makeup. Strong, not in appearance. Strong because I came here alone. And I didn't run away. When I entered the courtroom, they were already there. Kelly with her perfect hairstyle wearing a beige suit, a fake smile plastered on her face. Jason with a look that couldn't meet mine. He lowered his eyes when I walked past him. I was the first to testify. I told them everything. Calmly. Clearly. About the treatment. About how hard it was to leave the children. About the help from a friend that turned into something else. About Sophie's fears. About Kelly's threats. About how my son began to fear the woman he was supposed to call Aunt. They showed the letters. The medical reports. Audio recordings. Every sentence hit them like a slap in the face. Kelly pressed her lips together. Jason couldn't lift his head again. When it was their turn, it was pathetic. It was just support, Jason said. We didn't mean any harm. It just happened. I was under pressure. The children needed a woman in their lives, Kelly added. I was just trying to help. If I was too strict, I'm sorry. But I'm not their mother. No, you're not their mother, said the judge, looking straight at her. And you had no right to pretend to be. Her voice was firm, without sympathy. And the court will not tolerate adults' personal relationships poisoning the psychological well-being of children. 2 weeks after the hearing, I received the decision. Full custody, mine. The house, mine. Financial compensation to be paid by Jason. And Kelly was forbidden from having any contact with the children without my express consent. I read the decision and didn't cry. I just sat down on the bed, hugged Tommy close, and Sophie said, Now we're definitely going home, Mom? Yes, I replied. Home. It wasn't the end. But I had won the most important battle. I had my life back. And in my children's eyes, I was once again who I had always been. Their mom. Their only mom. Their real mom. 6 months had passed. The house belonged to me again. And to the children. I replaced the curtains, repainted the bedroom, and threw away all the things Kelly had brought. The smallest, most insignificant things, napkins, a vase, a teapot, were all gone. It wasn't just redecorating. It was a cleansing ritual. Tommy laughed in his sleep again. Sophie no longer stared fearfully at the door when I left for the store. And I breathed freely. Not always. Not every morning. But more and more often. I went back for checkups. My condition remained stable. Dr. Merrill, the same doctor who first told me my diagnosis, smiled and said, Your liver is a fighter. But most importantly, you are a fighter. Once when I came in with Sophie and Tommy, he leaned over to me and said, I think you're stronger than half my patients. And half the people I know outside the hospital. I laughed. It's not a choice. It's the only option. He walked us to the door and helped Tommy button his jacket. Sophie pulled me by the hand. Mom, is that the doctor who saved you? Yes, sweetie. He's nice. Can you be friends with him? I glanced at him, and we both laughed. We started talking outside the hospital. First it was coffee after appointments. Then it was random messages. And then dinner. Nothing started quickly. I wasn't ready for a new love. But I was ready for something good. Something calm. Something real. He didn't ask too many questions. He didn't pressure me. He didn't play the savior. He just was. And for the first time in a long time, being was enough. And then one day, Jason showed up. I was coming back from a walk with the kids and saw his car outside the house. Hi, he said quietly when I approached. Is something wrong? No. I just wanted to see them. It's not your day. You have a schedule. And it's not today. Laura. His voice cracked. I ruined everything. I didn't say anything. Sophie snuggled up to me. Tommy held my fingers. She left. Kelly. She's gone. She said everything between us was just impulse. And I'm all alone. And I realized that everything that was real I destroyed. He tried to look me in the eyes, but I turned away. Jason, you didn't destroy what was. You destroyed who was. I forgave you. For myself. Not for you. But you no longer have a place in my life. He wanted to say something, but I stopped him. Be a good father. Come when you can. Don't be late. Bring the kids back on time. But nothing more. I closed the door on him without anger. Without tears. Just a period. And it was the sweetest period of my life. Exactly 1 year had passed. I woke up at 6:47 a.m. Not because of an alarm, not because of fear, not because of tears. Just because. I wanted to wake up. Light was streaming through the curtains. Sophie had already put on her sweater inside out and was drawing something with markers on the kitchen table. Tommy in his pajamas was whispering something to his stuffed lion. And I stood in the kitchen doorway with a cup of coffee, catching myself thinking. I am happy. Not because everything was perfect. But because now everything was mine. I often think back to that moment. In that white hospital room. With a mask on my face, IVs in my hands, and my heart breaking every second from fear and loneliness. Back then, I thought I would never get up again. But I did. Not right away. Not beautifully. Not heroically. I fell dozens of times before I learned to stand. And then to walk. And then to defend myself. My children. My truth. My diagnosis no longer echoes in my head every day. I am in control. I follow the recommendations. I am alive. And every morning there is something new. Something I once feared, the unknown, loneliness, anxiety. Now it is my space. My choice. My freedom. Meryl is no longer just my doctor. We don't call it a serious relationship. We just are. He comes over for dinner. He plays dinosaurs with Tommy. He reads Sophie books before bed. Sometimes we sit in silence holding hands. No words are necessary. Because words aren't always necessary. I don't know where this will lead. But I'm not afraid of not knowing anymore. Because I've learned to live now. And that's enough. And Jason? He sees the kids on schedule. More or less consistently. He's become quieter. He's aged. I can see him trying to make amends. But that's not my story anymore. I wish him peace. And thank you for the children. But not for anything else. Because everything that is valuable I built myself. Today Sophie gave me a card. On it she wrote in crooked letters. Mom, you are my hero. You didn't cry when it hurt. You were with me. And you always will be. I started crying. Not from pain. But from gratitude. I went through hell. And I remained myself. Maybe even more, I became myself again.